Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Daly.
Here.
Vice President Headland. Here. Trustee Clements. Here. Trustee McNall.
Here.
And Trustee Parr will be here momentarily.
Thank you. So we are very excited to welcome so many people here with us tonight for a special presentation. So I'm going to turn it right over to Dr. Benante to take us into our pre-public meeting game recognition process.
Thank you, Ms. Daly, and welcome to many new visitors to our school. We appreciate your presence here this evening. And I was going to speak from the podium, but I'm actually going to speak from here because I can see everybody. So first, congratulations to our candidates who are up for tenure this evening. And for many, tenure signifies the end of your probationary period and some of the formalities that come along with a 3 or 4 year probationary process. And there is a benefit from that, I will say, but I also challenge you to think of tenure more for what it symbolizes in our profession and for Haldane. The crossing of a threshold, which signifies our trust that you know, understand, and embody the spirit of professionalism that's reflective of our community's standard for our educators. And I had read recently a simple notion in what separates amateurs from professionals. And that's that amateurs have amateur habits and professionals have professional habits. It's as simple as that. The professional engages in the routines of planning and preparation with deliberate intent. She reflects on her work, making adjustments along the way, and she remains attuned to other ideas and perspectives that may help her better serve her students. The professional understands that she's part of a larger whole and seeks to give more than she takes. These routines have a compounding effect and establish a level of excellence that can only be attained over time. And that's the standard for us here at Haldane, recognizable, habitual excellence. So today we celebrate you and that what you've demonstrated, your understanding of this, and your time here hopefully has just begun. So congratulations to you and your families. I look forward to our continued work towards excellence together. And Jen, what we're going to do is we're going to have each of our principals say a few words about each of our honorees this evening. So we'll start with Ms. Jamin, if you wouldn't mind, who's going to introduce 2 of our candidates this evening.
The first candidate I have the pleasure to introduce is Angela Branco. Angela is able to adjust her pedagogy to our kindergartners who are just learning to hold a pencil, all the way up to, at times, teaching an advanced art course for independent study at our high school level with our advanced art students, and is able to reach students everywhere in between, which is a true gift for a teacher. She runs a choice-based art program, which allows our students to create and engage using pieces of art and methods of art that they are passionate about, increasing their engagement and enthusiasm without sacrificing their learning. Students are encouraged at all times to embrace their creativity. Ms. Branco collaborates with our local organizations as well as organizations within the Haldane community, such as our Arts Alliance and our Outdoor Education Committee, to truly create the best learning environment for our students. So it is without hesitation that I am pleased to introduce Ms. Branco as one of our tenure candidates. And staying in the theme of the arts, I also have the pleasure of introducing Dan McGroarty. Dan McGroarty also works with students at multiple levels, reaching them and connecting with them through his teaching. He creates a positive classroom environment and encourages students to try new things, explicitly teaching them that they can do hard things and get better with practice. He is creative and flexible, which was exemplified in his work this year as he figured out how to teach music under distancing guidelines, outdoors, and under varying conditions. Over the last 4 years, he's stepped into leadership positions within the school, serving as the K-12 arts coordinator, sitting on the curriculum council, participating in the implementation of the strategic coherence plan this year, and serving on the school reopening task force and the Arts Alliance. So he serves as a teacher leader and a teacher in his classroom. So also without hesitation, I am pleased to recognize Dan McGrory. And I turn it over to Dr. Silke.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I stand before you with the pleasure of introducing 2 candidates for tenure. The first of those candidates is Ms. Jessica Perrone. So when I started 4 years ago, Jessica was starting as her full-time role here at Haldane. She had served other roles as prior to that, and she was starting as a special educator. And over the past 4 years, Jessica has served for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. She's co-taught mathematics and English, and she's also taught resource class, initially certified in literacy and in childhood education and special education 1-6. Upon request, Jessica completed her special education certification 712 generalist while serving at Haldane, which, if for those who are not in the education field, you may not know that it's really important for small schools like Haldane to have a versatile educator that could dedicate themselves to continued excellence and service of our students at all levels, and Jessica has done that. It's always a pleasure to go in and observe Jessica in her co-taught classrooms. She really embodies, I've seen her embody many of the co-teach models, and I keep on going in to catch her doing other models. I particularly like watching Jessica utilize parallel teaching, where both teachers are teaching the same material at the same time to a mixed group of kids. Ideally, in the best co-taught classrooms, it's impossible for an outside observer to distinguish between the content area teacher and the special educator, and I've seen that with Jessica Perrone. Apart from working with her students at Haldane, Jessica also serves as a valued member of the Haldane community, especially in the area of athletics. So during her tenure, Jessica has coached modified junior varsity and varsity levels. Haldane basketball and volleyball students have benefited from her dedication as a coach. I think that it's safe to say that Jessica Perrone will dedicate herself to continuous improvement, as she has a keen eye for continuing her professional learning, and it is without hesitation that I recommend Jessica Perrone for tenure. Okay, just checking to see where Terry was. So I now have the pleasure of recommending Terry Eckes for tenure. Terry also started the first year that I started, and there had not been a school librarian in the library for a time prior to Terry beginning. So under her guidance, we really have a K-12 library program that is blossomed and is continuing to blossom. So, and that's kind of a metaphor, because at the elementary school, the library program does have a garden component. So, and Terry has been part of that as well. So under her guidance, the mission of the library program has been to promote a love of reading. And that's first and foremost. So you may wonder, well, how does a librarian promote a love of reading? And there's many different ways to do that, and one of the ways that Terry has really dedicated herself to doing so is by supporting the development of a 21st century profile of library texts for students to access. So taking on the responsibility of really clearing the stacks of old volumes, talking with students to understand what their interests are, and then filling the library with texts that meet their interests, expanding the online databases so that she can reach students of all levels. Our students at the high school who are doing research have the benefit of accessing online databases because of Terry's work. Terry is actively involved in the region through PNW BOCES, and as a result, the library reflects not only interests of our students, but a quality of selection that comes from being tuned into texts that are current and being utilized throughout the region. It's without hesitation that I recommend Terry Eckes for tenure. Ms. Sniffen.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Kieran Lynch. Mr. Lynch is here this evening. So Mr. Lynch was, there's a trend here. He was my first hire upon going up to the high school full-time as well during that summer. Mr. Lynch is a change in career teacher. He started working as an electrical engineer in many local technology companies, then decided to go back to school to become a teacher following his mother's path, who his mom was also a teacher. I think it brings a wonderful change at times when students walk into a classroom and their teacher is a change in career in a perspective that's a little bit different than many of our teachers who go into teaching right out of college. So it's nice to have you as a member of our faculty for that purpose. In addition to that, Mr. Lynch teaches physics. He teaches AP Physics 1, he teaches AP Physics 2, he teaches advanced computer programming, and he teaches principles of engineering. Over his time with us, he's worked on perfecting his craft in regards to problem-based and project-based learning, a lot of hands-on activities for the students within the classroom, and really taking quite difficult concepts and making them accessible to many students. With that, over the years, his rates on the AP and on any of our standardized testing have tremendously increased over time. We're very proud of that work of our students, in addition to Mr. Lynch and his work there. In addition to that, when we talk about being members of the community, and we recognize as a small school, it's important that our teachers, whether it's coaching, the arts, but are involved in other things to help this whole community focus on the whole child. With that being said, Mr. Lynch has started with a group of students, the Astrophysics Interest Group. He can often be seen at sporting events pre-COVID and our dramatic performances. In addition to that, Mr. Lynch has brought in building connections both with IBM and Con Edison, local companies for our students to be involved in and build those connections. For these reasons, I recommend Mr. Lynch for tenure.
So our final, there was a longer microphone here at one point. This is way too short for me. So our final tenure candidate we're going to recognize this evening is Dr. Marianne Silke, and I have the honor of saying a few words about Marianne. And it's impossible to write about Marianne without first mentioning or discussing her character. I should say it's impossible to speak about Marianne without first talking about her character. Marianne brings a calming presence and a supportive approach in her work with students and families, as well as our faculty and staff. She sees herself, as many of you know, as an eternal optimist and demonstrates a growth mindset in her work with her students and their families, her colleagues, and her staff. And she's incredibly dependable and has demonstrated to be over these last few years that we've shared together. And I was going to mention some of the work that Marianne has accomplished and facilitated at the middle school, in particular PBIS, True Blue, a revision to our academic intervention services model. And Marianne's really, as all of our principals have, been an instrumental part of re-examining our approach to curriculum design and development. I was going to mention all that stuff and talk in great detail about it, but I'm going to put that aside because we had a moment today, and I often have these moments with Marianne, and our team does, where she will take the time as part of our regular process to introduce a new strategy or new skill to cultivate a more positive mindset. So as we wrap up each meeting, we go around the table. Does anybody have anything else to share before we conclude our meeting? And Marianne said, this may be totally not the right time for this, but I want to share with you a strategy that I learned about to replace a negative thought with a positive thought. And I said, go ahead, right now. I want it. Perhaps reading what was going on in my mind at the time, just trying to wrap the meeting up. And there was something about recognizing the negative thought that you're having, reflecting on it, and replacing it with a positive thought, a more positive thought. And we have moments like this with Marianne all of the time. I've probably learned more from Marianne in these small moments. And the meeting went on. The meeting went on, and we were continuing to share out. And Marianne reads me very well. She can see when I'm getting a little bit maybe kind of antsy or whatnot. And she was sitting next to me, and she whispered, Phil, recognize, reflect, and replace. So, thank you, Marianne. So I appreciate that about you, Marianne. She's an effective school leader whose steady presence has been a welcome addition to our community, and her methodical approach has resulted in important enhancements to our middle school while being respectful of the gradual nature of the change process. Marianne's a valued member of our district leadership team, and it's with great pleasure that I support her recommendation for tenure. Thank you, Marianne. First day with it, though, so, right? You'll forgive me? Yeah, I messed it up. It was, but I'm still working with it. With this in mind, again, we want to give our Board of Education members an opportunity to meet the friends and family members that are with our tenure candidates this evening, as well as to congratulate our tenure candidates. So we're going to take a brief recess. We have until about 7 o'clock, so we have cake, we have some fruit, we have some water, some light refreshments. Please help yourselves. I also want to thank Nancy Norton, who's here this evening with us, helping us out with that. Thank you, Nancy, for all your help behind the scenes. And with that, Jen, if it's okay, we'll...
Yeah, and I'll just share that the board will be acting officially
Yes.
on the tenure recommendations later in the meeting. But for those who are here who don't feel like waiting through our entire meeting, I'm sure Dr. Benante will give you all the play-by-play.
That's perfectly fine.
Later.
That probably will occur about 2 to 3 hours from now,
Yeah.
just to give you an idea.
So we will not take it personally if you do not wait for our official action. So thank you. Enjoy. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for being here. We started our meeting at 6:15 to recognize our tenure. I guess technically they're still candidates, but our tenured teachers and Dr. Marianne Silke, our to-be tenured administrator, that we will act on later in the meeting. And I will share that our next Board of Education meeting will be held on July 6th. That will be our reorganization meeting, Tuesday, July 6th at 7 p.m. right here. Yeah, and that's all I have to say about that. Okay, turning it over to Dr. Benante for his update.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks again to the members of our board and our administration for facilitating a nice reception for our tenure candidates. I'm actually going to just give 2 quick updates before we go into our strategic coherence plan report. The first is, as you're aware, the school district was scheduled to receive federal stimulus dollars over the course of the next few months. Again, how the monies come in is still to be determined. And I was going through this weekend the plan requirements in order for us to apply and to receive those funds, and noted that one of the plan requirements is for us to provide notice to the community on how the district intends to utilize the funding that we're scheduled to receive. And just to note for background information, we're not receiving a lot of money by comparison, but we are receiving around $290,000, I believe, Ann, in total, somewhere around there, between the two federal stimulus packages that were passed. So our intention, as the board is aware, in brief discussion with our administration, we put a support structure in place at the start of the school year, which included having 2 interventionists as part of our faculty. We would like to continue into next school year with one of those interventionists still in place. We feel that that's the best way to continue to provide a high level of support, in particular to our students who are more vulnerable and susceptible to disruptions of learning, which is our early learners, our elementary students. So I did put a notice out to the community today for, we're considering this an open kind of public comment period. I do not believe, and I'm still researching this, whether or not it's necessary for the board to have a formal public comment period like we would do for a district-wide safety plan or student code of conduct. I don't believe that's required. We just have to post our plan publicly and make available the opportunity for people to provide feedback. So I did provide notification to our families today, as we have other, I'm making the board aware. It's now posted on our website. And then as we get into July, that's when, assuming there's no strong sentiment to utilize the funding in different ways, I would move then to create the position of interventionist again, because there is a recommended action tonight to abolish the interventionist position, because that was part of our budget. But I would move to then create it again and then to move an individual into that position. The funding does allow us to sustain then that position for 2 years. We anticipate perhaps having to make modifications to our plan and how we utilize this funding as we continue to see how our students respond to the support through next school year. So what we're going to face, as many districts will, is getting money is a good thing, but sometimes getting a lot of money in a short time period and having to have a plan in place immediately to utilize it isn't the best way to be deliberate as one would wish in our planning. So if we see that we need to make modifications or we could better utilize the funding, we will. We'll make an adjustment to our application. But for right now, that's the initial intent in utilizing those funds. Second, there is an agenda item on this evening for the adoption of a middle school textbook resource. And Dr. Silke, I believe you were going to speak to a little bit the review of that. If I could invite you up now to do that prior to the strategic coherence plan update, I think now would be a better place for it. Thank you, Dr. Silke.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this work. Over the last year and a little bit before that, informally through discussions, Tom Vergidamo, our middle school math coordinator, working with myself, with Judy Barbera, and with our math teachers, began to set some goals for what we would like to achieve in reviewing resources and eventually recommending a resource to the board for adoption for mathematics. The New York State standards for mathematics have been updated, and we also were experiencing the desire to have a mathematics program that had a robust online platform and could be utilized for students that were on grade level, students that required enrichment materials, and students who had some gap closing that was necessary as well. So we embarked upon setting those goals. I've been updating the board little by little in board reports about what those goals were and the steps that we were taking to sort out and review the resources that were available, including looking to edreports.org and looking to regional data to see what programs were being used in other districts. Had it been a non-COVID year, we would have visited other districts to see how students are actually interacting with the math resources being used in different places. We weren't able to do that during this year. So we compared 4 programs against our identified goals, and we settled on the recommendation of Big Ideas Mathematics for 6-8, and because it matched most closely with our goals of that I stated before. And I just want to point out to you in the packet that I prepared for the board and Mr. Virgidano prepared for the board, that this the cost of this program is not for physical textbooks. It's for online textbooks for a 6-year cycle. So there's a benefit to that, because we were talking in a curriculum discussion earlier today, and oftentimes once something is written, it's old already. So the nice thing about this resource is that it is an online 6-year resource. We have the right to print. We also received classroom sets of the textbooks. So, and it's a robust classroom set because, as we know, Haldane classes are small. So it's a robust classroom set of textbooks, physical textbooks, that we received in reviewing the program. And what we're recommending for the board to adopt tonight is the online resource with rights to print for the 6 years.
Thanks, Mary. And that'll be on, that is on the agenda under consent financial for later on in the
Thank you, Dr.
agenda.
Super.
And with that, I'll transition and invite Judy up to present an update on several elements of our strategic coherence plan. I'm actually going to join Judy just to get us started, and we'll be using the screen behind me.
Judy, it's nice to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back.
It's lovely to see you all. And I have to say, I said to Phil a little while ago as we celebrated the tenure candidates, it was so exciting that, like, I knew them all. So,
Like family.
yes, absolutely.
Judy's part of the Haldane family. It's going to be hard to let Judy go. Keep hanging around here. We're going to hold on to you. Thank you, Judy. And just a brief introduction, and I'll turn it back over to you. I was sharing with one of our trustees, one of the things I missed most over the past year is the ability to go out to a good restaurant with my wife and our friends, and the kind of places where hospitality is taken seriously, where the food's not only good, but the feeling behind the service and the people are just as important, if not more so. And we shared some readings with our team from Danny Meyer, who you may know is the CEO of Union Square Hospitality Group and behind restaurants like Gramercy Tavern and Union Square Cafe and both mine and my son's favorites, Shake Shack. And in his book, Setting the Table, which is just as much about having valued outcomes, the essence of service and hospitality, and connecting that to the systems within, in his case, high-quality restaurants, and in our case, building and continuing to refine a high-quality school district. So we're using that as an analogy for how we've approached our coherence planning work this school year. We've tried to set the table in anticipation of what's to come. We've examined, redeveloped, and refined 3 core areas of our district's approach in curriculum design and development, how we support students both academically and behaviorally, and our approach to professional learning. And we've learned a lot along the way, and I'm proud to have had, and honored really, to have had Judy as a key facilitator in, with our leadership team in how we've approached this work this school year. And I think we've set the table really well for the year to come. So with that, I'll turn it over to Judy one more time. Yes, I'm going to advance my slide. There's the setting the tables. I was supposed to go to that first. All right, Judy. Thanks for reminding me. Go ahead, Judy. We'll take it from there. And Judy, do you want to hold the mic or do you want
Yes,
me
I
to?
would.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
And I'm going to sit right behind you.
Whoops, did you take my paper? Okay, very good. All right, very good. Thank you, thank you. I was watching you as Dr. Benante started with his story there, and you're kind of like, what's he talking about, right? We're going to restaurants, but the analogy of setting the table, I don't know that he remembers this, but I reminded him the other day that not the beginning of this year, but the beginning of the last school year, when we talked about what my role would be here in the district, he either said or I thought he said, don't really want you to do much. Just want you to get the table set, right? So that's the way that I have continued to really try and think about my role here in the district, which over time has just, for me, been a real learning experience. And so as I come here again this evening, remember our last update was in December, so here we are, 6 months later. What I would like to just say one more time is that I'm honored to give you a status update, but just know that this is not about Judy's work, right? This is about the work of your professional staff here in the district, certainly all of your administrative instructional leaders, and I'm glad they're here to hear it again tonight, but also your designated teacher leader structures, both people that hold positions, curriculum coordinators, department chairs, those kind of folks, as well as, and this was so much fun this year, getting to know some additional faculty members who I'm going to say are clearly educational leaders. It's the disposition of leadership, right, that really brings value to the collective efforts of any organization, and boy, do you have it here in Haldane. So again, thank you for the opportunity to, again, just remind you that, as you look at a little bit at the slides up there, this is really about student learning. And I'm very careful when we talk about that word curriculum. You know, this is a curriculum update. Well, yeah, it is. You're going to hear plenty about curriculum, but really it is curriculum and the way we measure how our students are progressing in what we define we want them to know and be able to do, as well as all of the instructional practices, the professional practices that our faculty use to facilitate that learning. So curriculum, assessment, and instruction, all within the bigger context of professional learning, as we are all committed to lifelong learning. And then, of course, at this current time, within the context of our current environment. So the presentation basically has two parts to it. So the first part is going to be, once again, kind of that context setting. I'm going to go through it at a rather rapid pace because there really is a lot of redundancy to what we said last time. So it's just to kind of like bring those concepts back forward. And then what I have to share tonight that's new is really more detailed information on the amazing progress actually that has been made. So here we are again, remembering that we've got to keep the main thing the main thing. And again, I think that a lot of this work was only possible because pre-pandemic there was that work around strategic coherence planning. So what did we get out of that plan? We certainly got those Haldane Essentials that are now posted in every single one of the learning environments on this campus. But in addition to that, we got a set of high leverage strategies, 5 of them, if you're into counting, that really enabled us as a leadership and teacher leader group to be thinking about the actions that can be taken in a very good school district that will just elevate the practice, right? The good to great shift. So remember that. Again, you saw this before. I put a new visual up there as I'm thinking more and more about systems and how critical they are for the purpose of especially sustaining efforts. Right? Organizations often, we're all about the people, and we should be, but you can't rely on people or programs even. It really has to become more system-wide work in order for the collective efforts to be sustained. And there are many different kinds of systems, but when systems within an organization are connected, integrated and actually get to the point of interdependence, then there's a much higher chance that those efforts will honestly be sustained. And that's what we owe kids, right? We owe kids that all of this good work that every single teacher does in their classroom day in and day out is something that collectively will promote and foster the valued outcomes here in Haldane. Okay, so as we look at those gears, right, what we don't want is we don't want a bunch of systems just all headed in the same direction. We want them actually working together in a powerful way. So that's all with the context setting. Everybody good to move on? Okay. So remember that in terms of the actual strategies within the Strategic Coherence Plan, there are technically 5. And I want to say that you see the 3 up there right now that had the greatest connection with teaching and learning. And those are the 3 that our principals, as well as Tara, and all of our teacher leaders have kind of clustered around this year. But as the work got broader and deeper, I see connections to the other 2 strategies as well, the one around goal setting as well as the one around communication. So honestly, I think the table setting is done, and we're really ready to serve appetizers. You notice my little clip art there, right? You see the ramp? Because before we said we love this metaphor about table setting, we were talking a lot with our teacher leader group about, no, this is not about now opening that document and saying, okay, so what are we doing? What actions did we decide we were going to take? This is really more about building the ramps that will enable us to put those actions into play probably more like next year. So lots and lots of good ramp building this year. The first strategy is that K-12 curriculum alignment strategy with a focus on the Haldane Essentials. If you read that, if you were to go back to your original document, the wording here has been modified a little bit. Not that it needed to be, except that it just needed to be a little bit more accessible to our group of teachers who were willing to really get started engaging in curriculum design. So again, you remember this is about that box of colored pencils, and making sure that it was, that they are in there in a way that students can progress through the grades here in Haldane, always standing on the shoulders, right, of their experience the year before. So it's about alignment, and we have, 2 ways that we really pushed this conversation forward with teachers that actually found a little bit of extra bandwidth to devote to this work this year. So we said, okay, curriculum alignment. Well, first of all, we have to really be thinking clearly about our curriculum articulation. You can't start the process of alignment unless you can actually agree upon how we're going to define and articulate the curriculum. Then in addition, once we had that going, then you start thinking about the integration of the Haldane Essentials, right? You can't integrate if you don't first have it clearly articulated. So what you see here is probably a little bit too much text. But what I'll draw your attention to is on the left-hand side there, we have a group of teachers who actually committed to some in-service course work with us this year. There were as many as 13 at one point in time. My most recent meeting with the ones that are still hanging on and still doing design work was actually today. And what they're designing is they're designing a process as well as a product that would enable articulation of the curriculum or the instructional program here in Haldane. So one of the things that we started with was a draft document for them to use as a planning template. And we did it not at the lesson level, but at the unit level. They've gone ahead and played with, explored, used that document, made suggestions about ways that it could be refined. We've incorporated their suggestions, and now they're actually working on a second either unit or a curriculum overview for the year. You'll see visuals that help you kind of like to wrap your mind around those ideas in just a moment. Okay, but that's really one very front-running group, and it represents all three buildings, elementary, middle, and high school. And we've had lots of conversations with them about how they now can in turn help to build capacity internally through all that they've learned through the process. Very interesting. The product is, I think, very impressive, but of course the product is not what's really most valuable. It's really the process and the collaboration that people have put into their process. Today we did Critical Friends Protocol. We had 4 groups of teachers from the high school early this morning. We had some elementary, middle school folks this afternoon, where they actually were able to share their work with each other and give both warm and cool feedback. So that's a little bit about what Cohort A has been doing. Right, unusual year this year, so we really had to be creative about, wait a minute, we can't leave anybody behind, so we have to do a little something with all faculty, and that happened. It happened actually in January of this year, where there was an after-school session and every faculty member either attended the session, it was virtual, or was able to listen to the recording. So even though you have some people that have now already more time and energy invested in the process, everybody is aware that it's happening. And I have actually some last conversations planned for tomorrow and Thursday with individual or pairs of teacher leaders about what are best entry points for them and for the people that they represent. So that's where we are at this time. That's the update on curriculum articulation for the purpose of really alignment, vertical alignment. On the other side, the Haldane Essentials, it's not separate, right? It's over on the other side, but remember that we continue to cross over into both of these components of this work. But for the Essentials, principals actually dedicated time within all of their faculty meetings during this last semester for a deeper exploration of the essentials. And we did it a couple of different ways. In some cases, we shared some vetted resources, especially for the essentials, that were not really common, I would say, growth mindset, emotional intelligence, and wellness. And we also solicited from faculty what their favorite resources are with regard to critical thinking, problem solving, and communication, those skills that they have been integrating into all of their student learning experiences forever, okay? So that's going on with all faculty. With regard to the cohort, they've really been, I think, very, very receptive and creative about, so what does this look like? What is it actually, how does it live within a unit plan? And they've come up with a couple of different models, and we keep saying that any way it seems to work for you is the way that it should then be promoted. It's not about trying to get everybody on the same page. And excited to say that they are ready to have us share some of their work with other colleagues, again, because it's not all the same. It's really kind of, there are nice variations, and that way we feel that there are just different entry points for people depending on their discipline, depending on their experience, and their own teaching style. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on with regard to the essentials. There's been a lot of discussion, especially amongst the cohort, about getting more specific about, but what does it actually look and sound like in my classroom? And we keep welcoming that question, but I force them to let it be rhetorical at this point, which I know is a little, can be like, oh, but we just want to know. And I think the answer is, until we have broader involvement, full faculty, by getting that specific about defining what it means for a second grader to have an appropriate level of growth mindset, I'm afraid that we'll lock some people out. So there's good conversation about it without any actual, and now this is what it is. Okay? Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. I could talk forever about that stuff. There are the documents. You're not intending to be able to read everything on that slide, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that, there's actually stuff now that teachers that our group is using. And what I did is I made larger font size the categories that are within this document, just so you could get a quick idea. There's a contextualizing, so here's a little bit about this unit, not a summary of it, but where it fits within the context of the course. Here are the big ideas, right? What we really want kids to be able to understand as we work through this unit, prompted, of course, through inquiry, so your essential question. You notice on the left-hand side on the bottom, there's a place for them to indicate what the priority concepts, skills, and Haldane essentials are within this unit. But to the left of that, also a section for foundational concepts and skills, things that they're expecting kids are bringing into this unit of study, whether it be through work that was done earlier in the year in that classroom, or maybe even in prior years. A little bit of, there's, I think, a level of sophistication to that, but it was really embraced by the teachers, especially as they're thinking about right now with, lack of in-person schooling for some kids for a little bit, for other kids for a more extended period of time, and wanting to make sure that they're really thinking intentionally about what they expect kids to be bringing in. It pairs with a diagnostic assessment experience that you see over on the right. And then you see, again, what is typical, both the formative and summative means of assessment within units. That's the first page of the document. Teachers are calling it the cover page, which I just love. We're trying to limit it to being kind of that one-pager. That's an annotated version, so you see a lot of text on there. When teacher actually uses it, the annotation comes off and they insert their planning into that document. And then lastly, there's a second document that we didn't create to begin with. It kind of happened as teachers were talking about their different ways of planning instruction. And there were a few teachers in our cohort, especially new to a course or new to the profession, who felt that rather than diving deeply into a unit, they really kind of needed to first think more from the bigger perspective up on the balcony, the course for the year. So this is what we call a curriculum overview document. And some members of the cohort have been exploring that. We get the sense that this might be a really, really good entry point for many teachers as we broaden the scope of the work next year. Related conversations. These are not decisions that have been made, but they're just things that keep coming up as you talk about really designing curriculum. It's like in a district, wouldn't it be nice if we revisited, and I know it's been here in Haldane before, the concept of a real cycle for curriculum review. So again, this is just beginning conversation. I'm sure you'll hear more about it next year. And then the other related conversation is around review of instructional materials. So this connects with what you heard Mary Ann just talk about. And as she said, had the opportunity to work with Mary Ann and with Tom around the adoption that you have before you tonight, but also working with Christine and some key staff members in her building as the elementary begins this process, and wanting to ensure that what we're coming up with is a process that really works across disciplines and across grade levels. So more of a district system for reviewing and adopting instructional materials. Mary Ann mentioned edreports.org. The 6 steps that you see there are basically lifted from the work that they do, which is, from my perspective, just really, really strong work. And then what we're doing with the elementary folks is actually going through the steps and defining the actions that they have already taken and the actions that they will plan next year as they continue their process. I'm going to take a breath. That's all around the first strategy. It's the one with the most work, so it took me the longest. Would you like to pose a question now, or should we finish the other 2 strategies? Anybody? Dr. Benante, you're good? Okay, all right. Oh, very exciting, very exciting. So this is the strategy around student support. There's the actual language, just in case you need a reminder, lifted out of the Strategic Coherence Planning document. This is something that we actually got a little bit of a start on pre-pandemic with our curriculum council, but then it was under Christine and Tara's leadership with a small group from the council that they actually pushed it all the way to the point where actually, probably the next meeting or sometime soon, the board will have a multi-tiered system of support plan that you can review and hopefully adopt. Okay, so that umbrella is what the visual that you see whenever you Google image search, MTSS. And so again, it is to remind us that this is absolutely about instruction and intervention with regard to children's academics, their social emotional learning, as well as behavior. So this is really a very broad concept, and when you think about the way that it gets implemented, I would say that there are kind of 3 different look-fors, areas where there's some change suggested as you review the plan. The first one is really around language. The language has been updated. We talked about AIS for a long time. All of a sudden, there was this thing called RTI, and a lot of question about, is that the same as AIS? No, it's a little bit broader. So right now, the current language is around MTSS, and so one of the language shifts that was recommended for this plan that you'll look at this summer is really that this is really about the work of the student support team, formerly called the child study team, okay? So the language is, and our group took a good look at this. They were really comfortable with the shift in language, but it isn't just about the words, it's really about the process as well. So we actually did some jigsawing of the plan with our teacher leader group. They were able to go in and look at what they see as potential benefits in the way the plan now is written, as well as identify some challenges. So there's definitely work that will be done next year, both at the building level, in terms of the student support teams, as well as again at the building level, but from the perspective of really more data teams. Now again, in a small district, you worry about how many teams can we have, because we only have so many people, and we really haven't talked too much about what the overlap would be between those 2. But data teams really do look at big picture data, standardized and otherwise, and use it to make decisions about individual students, clusters of students, or really about your instructional program, resources that you use, practices within classrooms, et cetera. So I think that the team, lots of questions about that. And I think that there's going to be a lot of work that not only classroom teachers, but also school clinicians, academic support staff will really be a good way to kind of get a synergy around, hopefully, common goals that, again, will feel kind of like the curriculum design piece is feeling to people this year. Okay, so that's the second of the 3 strategies where there's been some significant work. And then the third one, talk about connections and integrations, is around professional learning. And once again, there's a plan in process. Needs a little bit more work than the MTSS, so my guess is you're going to see that probably, hopefully, before the beginning of next school year. But that plan, again, has been updated using the guidance from New York State around professional learning, focus on the standards, different andragogy practices. There was a needs assessment done of the faculty. Lots and lots of work happened this year to kind of put together something that really ties together the work of the other subgroups, curriculum design and student support, now around, so what do people need in terms of learning support in order to implement, right, those different systems. In addition to that, there is a tremendous, I think, value and respect here in Haldane for, but it's not about everybody's going to do the same kind of learning, right? So there has to be a level of consistency so that your collective efforts can be maintained, but also individual needs that will balance that. And so I see that already in the draft of the professional learning plan that we have. A lot around culturally responsive, sustaining education, which is now right there, kind of front and center in the plan. And I think that even though the plan is still being drafted, that doesn't mean that professional learning hasn't started yet. It's really been ongoing this year, and in a way that I think made sense because it was, yes, aligned with the goals in the strategic coherence plan, but at the same time aligned with what people needed to be able to make the shift to remote and hybrid and, you know, all of the different instructional models that they have been able to implement this year. So that's a little bit more just about what's going on with professional learning. And again, as I said, our teacher leaders, we've asked them to think very, very, to get a focus on what do you need as a teacher leader and what are you anticipating the people that you represent need as well, so that this plan can have, yes, a good focus, but also the many facets that you need to be able to meet the needs of all adult learners. So I had a table setting at the end. I don't know, Dr. Benante didn't put that into the presentation, but I think that honestly, I think the table is set, and I thank you again for the opportunity to do this learning together with your professional staff. It's been a very remarkable experience for me. Questions on what you just heard?
I have a couple quick questions on the curriculum, actually on the first part. Just for my edification, how often is someone designing a curriculum for themselves, and how often are they designing them for a group of people to administer over the course of a year?
For a group of people to implement that actual unit, John?
Either a co-taught situation or a situation where you have a number of teachers who are implementing the same curriculum.
Yeah, yeah. So we've looked at, as we've done this work, you know, this is not new work for anybody here. I mean, teachers just plan and design their curriculum continuously. And really almost never use the same unit of study that they implemented in the past. We were having that conversation earlier today around how curriculum is really a very dynamic situation. But the uniqueness here in Haldane is there are many cases where I'm the only teacher that's ever going to implement this unit of study. What we've really tried to keep in focus, though, is yes, but other people are working with the same students that you have in your classroom engaged in this unit of study. And how valuable would it be, and this is a question, for you to know a little bit more about what those learning experiences are like for the students, right? So what we've had to do is actually say, with some of our teachers who take this template, this document, and not only complete what you saw, but then put so much more into it. And we're like, yikes, that's great, because that was meaningful for you. You're really using it as a rigorous planning tool, but remember that this is really also for an audience that's not going to be implementing the unit. Yeah. And so as soon as we say that, it's like, ooh, so maybe I'll hyperlink those learning outcomes or those guiding questions instead of putting them all on the document. So that's kind of where we're still kind of messing around with it and trying to find out what people really value. But the idea of then, because it's going to be shared and I'm going to implement it as well, here in Haldane, that happens in the elementary, right? Because you do have multiple people on the grade level. But you also, in your elementary division right now, have some really significant instructional resources that are in many ways kind of defining not the entire curriculum, but good chunks of it. All of the work with the TC units of study, for example. The work with your Engage New York and Eureka Math materials. So I had a great conversation with a couple of first grade teachers today about, so what are you thinking about this? Tell me what you see as benefits, what do you see as challenges, and continue to really promote that this is not about filling in boxes, right? It's not a checklist. This really is something that, yes, it's for you, but it's also for other people. And they said to me, you know what, Judy? We need like a K-1 focus so that we could be critical friends for each other. And at the same time, we'll also be increasing the vertical articulation between those two grades.
Great. Thank you.
Good, John. Okay, all right. So one last thing, but that your question prompted is, in all of this work, there actually has been, we had one staff member, it's okay if I say a name, right, Phil? Sarah Grom is one of our designers. And in the beginning, I was kind of like, I'm not quite sure where Sarah is with this. And then I realized that she was bringing units of her regular ed co-teaching partner. Because, yeah, wait, Sarah is not. Well, she does for some of her, resource room and groups of kids where it's just Sarah and the kids. But she's really oftentimes implementing a unit of study that somebody else is designing. So what we decided is, ask Sarah, could you think about a companion document for the actual unit of study plan that special educators and academic support staff and other folks could really feel confident that the work that they're planning for the students that they work directly with is very connected with the core learning experiences of the units in their classroom. And we have a consultant that we've brought in as a partner this year. She said to me, oh my goodness, Judy, I mean, like that is through the roof kind of work when people are willing to think about how intentional we want to be in our planning. So, wasn't quite sure where to put that, John, but your question prompted me to remember to share it with you.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Judy, I don't know if this is a question for you, but you spoke a lot about what work had been done this year with the teachers in a strange year.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what we should expect next year? Like what would be on the docket in terms of the staff's work?
Yeah.
And how would it be different than this year?
So assuming that we are going to continue with this nice kind of little upswing on, yes, everything feels like it's getting back to some kind of new normal, but that school will, that things will go smoothly with all of that. Then what I'm imagining absolutely is broadening so that there are more people involved, but I think you also have to do that very carefully. This is difficult work. This is very sophisticated work. It's not the kind of thing that you just kind of go, okay, now everybody is going to. So I think broadening the audience so that eventually, I don't know, I'm big on like 3 to 5 years, there really is a clearly articulated curriculum, kind of K-12, that Haldane Essentials really are integrated throughout student learning experiences in a way that's, yes, clear to teachers, but clear to kids, right? To make sure that kids are really beginning to see themselves not only as learning skills and content for their courses, but also just as a learner, the growth mindset, the wellness, all of that. I also think that we want to be careful that it's not all around the curriculum, the design, that MTSS piece, that student support piece, because that's about tier 1 instruction, so it's your professional practices in your classroom, as well as then interventions for kids for whom that tier 1 just is not getting them where you need them to be yet. So it's a lot, and it's not, but where it comes from is it doesn't come from a place of something's broken and needs to be fixed. It comes from a place of really, here's what we've got already, how can we refine and really make sure that those essentials are really prominent in the way we think about the student learning experience here in Haldane. So I think, again, broadening so that there are more staff involved. I think by the end of the year next year, it should be really, hopefully, all, as well as just promoting those who have already gotten into it to just continue to go deeper, because they're coming up with ideas that I think are really, sophisticated is the word that keeps coming to my mind. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but really take the work and elevate it to a level. And then I think what you have to be careful of is that it's about the people, but then how do you take that and systematize it so that it's something that becomes who Haldane is, right? In addition to being a very inclusive, embracing, proud community, but a community where you actually have gotten focused on what you want kids to, how you want them to leave your system, and to be able to say with confidence that both the teachers have the guidance and resources they need, as well as the students. So going broader and going deeper, and I think just continuing to build that internal capacity.
Thank you. Any more questions
Anybody else?
for Judy? Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for your work. Anything else about the strategic coherence plan, Dr. Benante, or are we moving right along?
One last note that I'll just add, and thank you, Judy, for your support through the presentation and also along the year, is that a reminder that embedded into our coherence plan, if you were to review the document, are a series of rubrics that were developed by the design team as a point of reflection on where we are with respect to each of the goals or strategies associated with the plan. So as part of our process, we should be re-engaging the core planning team on a continual basis to assess where we are in our work. That's a cross-section of community members. It's important to continue to have their perspective along the way and also to report out on how we're doing, because not everyone is necessarily watching these presentations and attending to the work as our board is. So I did not feel that this year really allowed the space to re-engage the coherence planning team, but next year will. So that will become a part of our regular process, is to make sure that we're keeping our coherence planning team apprised of our efforts, and then also seeking their feedback on how they view our progress along the way. That's all I have, Jen.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're going into special recognitions, and this is hard to believe, but it's Margaret Parr's last meeting with us.
It is.
Is it hard to believe? Or
Is it hard to believe, or you cannot wait? So, are you not sure what you're going to do on next Tuesday night?
I have had meetings on Tuesday nights since before my children started Haldane, so this will be this will be a nice
Nice
break
change of pace.
for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that, I've had the pleasure of serving with Margaret for her entire time here on the board. And Margaret and I have had the opportunity to experience many different elements here at Haldane together, some challenging things, some successful things, some I can't believe that happened things. And what I know about Margaret is that she keeps ethics and empathy and students at the forefront of every single decision and discussion. And it's been a pleasure to serve with you, to learn from you, to work by your side. You've made a tremendous impact at Haldane, not just on the board, but in many arenas, and you'll be missed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It
Thank
has
you.
been an honor.
Yeah. This is a certificate for you
Thank
from
you.
Westchester Putnam School Boards Association.
Thank you.
And Dr. Benante, I believe, has some,
I'm presenting the flowers.
Please.
Wonderful.
with a twirl or pizzazz or something.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I do.
And this is also Douglas Donaghy's last meeting with us, and it has been a pleasure to have you serve with us. And I know that, Ms. Sniffen always helps us select these incredible students to be on the board with us, and they're also very incredible because they're very busy. So we know that you've had many a thing on your plate your senior year, and we thank you for making some time for us, and we wish you very well in your next adventure.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine, actually.
Thanks. Thank you for being here.
A small token of our appreciation for you.
Oh, thank you.
Look forward to Saturday.
Yeah. Thank you.
A small anecdote, Jen?
Yes, please.
Trustee Parr. I always, you wonder when you put Friday reports together and board agendas together, like, is anybody really reviewing this? And there's no doubt that Margaret is, because I've noticed a pattern that every Tuesday, somewhere between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., Margaret will send her questions. Like, if you're going to get a question from Margaret, not only does it happens at this specific time
Yes.
more often
Well, it's usually earlier than that. It's usually prior to 7 a.m.
Well, part of being a good trustee is putting the preparation in for the meeting, and there's no doubt that you've done that, Margaret. And I've appreciated your attention to detail over the years. It's helped, and your questions and your respectful challenges of me or of district leadership. That's an important part of our process here, and it's made me a better superintendent, and I really appreciate you for that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any communication from the public at this time? No. Okay, we're going to go into information reports, so we'll start with Mr. Donaghy.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Haldane Booster Club for organizing and holding the Haldane Athletic Awards celebration, which was held today on the turf field at 2:15. All teams modified through varsity were recognized for their efforts this year, as well as scholar athlete teams and teams that won league, sectional, or regional games and victories and such. Players were recognized for awards such as all league, all section, all county, and or all conference. And players were also recognized for both continuing their athletic careers in college next year and for career milestones that they achieved this year at Haldane.
And Mr. Donaghy, where are you headed next year?
I am headed to the University of Chicago.
Awesome.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Also, in line with Haldane tradition, the senior class student council will be painting the bell tomorrow, which was very recently confirmed. Additionally, prom will be held on Thursday the 17th from 6 to 10 p.m. at Boscobel, and graduation will be held here at Haldane on Saturday the 19th at 10:30 a.m.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jammin.
I'm sad that Mr. McGroarty wasn't able to stay around for the rest of the meeting after recognizing him earlier, because my first part of the report is just to recognize that we started the year very early as the reopening task force, and I was lucky to have Mr. McGroarty as part of the elementary representatives for the teachers. And music was one of the really difficult things to plan for as we entered the year. I remember one of our first reopening meetings was at the time that choral performance out west had led to so much spread within the choir. And so he and I had a lot of discussion about where our music program would go and how we were going to address music going into the school year and keeping our students safe. And at the time, I think we jokingly discussed a glockenspiel performance group at the elementary school, but it came to fruition. And the weather has gotten in the way a little bit, but our students have been learning how to play the glockenspiel, and our 4th and 5th graders have composed their own pieces that incorporated both glockenspiels and bongo drums and bells, and performed them for our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd graders. They were a little too nervous to perform for the 3rd graders, the age difference just making them a little self-conscious. But every 4th grade and 5th grade class put on a performance. We have one left that got rained out that was supposed to be yesterday that we need to still do later in this week, but we have had 7 performances that went very well, and not to disparage beginning band students, but I will say that a beginning clarinet, and this is speaking from my own experience as the parent of a beginning clarinet player, the beginning glockenspiel is quite pleasant, even when you make a mistake. It is similar to wind chimes. So the performances were, they were lovely. And they did a great job with their practice pieces, but also with their own compositions, and have just been great. My only regret being that we weren't able to put them on for full audiences and invite parents in that way, but still being able to provide our students with authentic audiences. And if I thought this meeting would end with daylight, I would offer to bring you out, but if not, I open this offer to you at another time. Our 5th graders presented to groups of faculty and administrators after researching global problems. So one group was telling me all about the horrific loss of biodiversity that they have been researching with Miss Windels for their writing class. And then they related those problems to our local environment, and for the lack of biodiversity, how could we increase animal and plant habitat on our campus, which would improve biodiversity locally and therefore for the whole planet. And they put together proposals on what they would do to solve that, and presented a budget and what they would need and what materials they would need and what space they would need, and got approval if they were quality projects. And Mr. Dudar was able to work with them all, so they did all become quality projects, which was wonderful. And that nature space is taking shape as we speak outside of our art classroom. And there are currently 3 bunny habitats, a number of native plant beds, the beginnings of an additional outdoor classroom, bird houses, bird feeders, a number of things really taking shape that were designed by our students. A runoff mitigation system to provide temporary habitats for traveling frogs. It's quite impressive for our 10 and 11-year-olds to be putting together. So they've been working on doing that during their recess, ELT time, and then a little bit before and after school. So if anybody should like to take me up on a tour when there is daylight, I am happy to show you the work that they are putting together.
Thank you. Dr. Seelke.
I
can say with certainty that I've already seen more pollinators on campus. And yes, I'm really quite excited. So I was lucky enough to serve as one of the authentic audience members to hear the presentations of the students as they completed their research, and decisions had to be made about which projects would move forward. So it's nice to see it come to fruition. I also want to talk about our music program and our fine arts program, because another thing that happened, aside from the Glockestra, was we had middle school, high school outdoor performances. And I just, learning at its best is a celebration of life. And hearing our students perform outside, albeit to a much smaller audience than they normally would do for musical performances, was just, really a treat after a really difficult year, and a lovely opportunity for our students to show off their skills and what they had learned in music classes. And artworks were displayed as well during the performances. Additionally, our students usually go up to Bard to partake in the debate competition, and because that was not possible this year because of COVID, Mr. Sniffen, with a crew of people, made that happen here on campus. So we had teams from Haldane, from Manitou, and from Unionvale, and we took over campus for a Saturday and had 3 rounds of debate under the tents, and our students did an amazing job with that. Hopefully that'll be in the newsletter in great detail, so you'll be able to read about it. It was really an impressive event. And then local field trips. Field trips are a part of the end of the celebration of the school year, and although our 8th graders were not able to go to Frost Valley, they were able to go to take a team building trip to Sharp on Monday. We were worried that the weather wouldn't cooperate, but it did enough. And also to mention all of the other little field trips that are going on, with hikes in PE class resuming, and trips to James Pond, and just all of the accessing of our resources around us for outdoor learning. So thank you for letting me highlight those.
Thank you. Ms. Sniffen?
Dougie, I'm very happy to hear that you as a leader have been able to coordinate the painting of the bell tomorrow. So I'm going to just publicly thank you for that. I was clearly excited. I do hope that the rabbits don't eat all the lettuce, but we'll have to keep an eye on that with you guys. Okay. Just a few things to wrap up the year. Obviously, it's been a challenging year for many students, for many families, for all of us. But I think if there's one thing I can take away this year, I think the amount of work that everybody has put in, from the board to the superintendent under his leadership, it's been amazing, I think, what we've been able to accomplish. So I just think it's June, it's our last board meeting, and I thank all of you for your support throughout the year, because there's been some really difficult decisions and times that we're clearly not making everybody happy all the time. So, I thank you for that. With that being said, I think one of the things we pride ourselves in is our ability to see beyond just the classroom, and that it is much larger and it's much bigger than that. So I would like to thank all of the students and the teachers and outside staff members who have stepped up to make sure that different activities have happened to allow for the whole child to have some experiences. And I look at Dougie and I know it's not exactly what Dougie would have wanted for his senior year, and it certainly isn't exactly what I would have wanted for your senior year. But I think that you have, and the students have, taken it in stride. They have been graceful. They've been appreciative, and I'm grateful for that. With that said, one of the things we were able to accomplish this year, for many reasons I was concerned about, one being that Dr. Richter retired, and for years he has been allowing students a voice and an outlet for themselves in terms of literature, whether it was poetry, short stories, or other reflections and artwork, to allow them to express that. It's definitely high school content, high school material, but I did leave some copies with Catherine Platt for you of the student literature and work that they've done. I think it's important just to recognize every year they dedicate the magazine to a staff member or somebody that's close to them. And this year the students elected Mr. Haldane. So I'd just like to read really quickly what they've put in the front cover for him. It says, "This year's literary magazine is dedicated to a teacher that every year, without fail, gains the respect and appreciation of students and teachers alike. Christian Haldane is a staple within the Haldane community. With his dedication to his students and band, the Blues Devils, if you ask any student their feelings on this teacher and his ability to be patient, kind, and attentive to the needs of others, all would reply with pure gratitude for the time they spent with him in the classroom. Without Mr. Haldane, the Haldane experience wouldn't be what it is now." So I just think that was very nice of them to do that. And there are a few copies there. There's not enough, but if anybody would like a copy, we also do post it online. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rounds.
Good evening. So as Julia discussed, we are dedicated here at Haldane to educating the whole student and going beyond the walls of the school building. So piggybacking off of that, I wanted to share a success story tonight, and also let the board know about a service that we provide to some of our students with IEPs. So we do provide a service for some students on their IEPs called parent training. And it's been very successful this year with the students who have that service and the families that have that service on their IEPs. It provides a lot of carryover so that parents can support their children at home in a consistent way that we're providing supports here at school. And it provides a good home-to-school connection. And this year, as I said, it's been successful with several families, but just to highlight one, we had a little guy coming to school who was not yet potty trained. He was having a really hard time getting on the bus and really just needed a lot of support getting him into the school. And we were putting a lot of behavior strategies in place for him here at school. And we implemented parent training in order to allow for some of the strategies that we were using here at school to be used at home as well. So our professionals, our behaviorist, our school social worker, provided schedules to the family for routine, for morning routines, for nighttime routines. They provided articles on potty training. We were potty training here at school, but then there was carryover at home so that this child could have that same consistent methodology of being potty trained. We use something called social stories, which is sort of a graphic story with sometimes real pictures, sometimes cartoons that will prepare a child for certain situations and certain environments. And all of this was implemented with our behaviorist and our school social worker working with the family to provide that ongoing collaboration with the family. We had his annual review recently, and this child's been extremely successful. Potty trained now completely, and getting on the bus happily, coming to school. Parents learned they learned about planned ignoring for certain behaviors that were attention-seeking but not adaptive behaviors. They were maladaptive behaviors. They learned how we reward positive behaviors and carried over those skills at home. And I just wanted to highlight that because they were so appreciative of the support that they were getting from our staff here outside of school. And it just really highlighted to me, these are people that are so invested in the wellness of our students, the overall wellness of our students. And it was a great example of collaboration and communicating with our families, and a success story all around for this child and for many other students who had the same service. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Good evening. I believe last month I spoke about all the events that the facilities department supports, and as anticipated, the tempo of those events has not subsided. We find ourselves here in the midst of the final push of the last week and a half to support these events, all the most important events of the year, ensure the campus is prepared. And even as we go towards the end of the year, we find ourselves in transition. It's the end of the school year, but it's also the beginning of our summer. We are prepared for the summer. We have all of our work projects prepared, both materials on site, and whether these projects are in-house projects or contracted, we're prepared and ready to work throughout the summer. And then in terms of capital project, we did have a kickoff meeting this morning with Arrow Steel Windows, the contractor performing the window replacement. The windows are fabricated. They are sitting in a storage facility in northern New Jersey, which is great news. We reviewed logistics, we reviewed staging areas. Contractor is prepared to be on site to mobilize on June 28th to start that work. So we're looking forward to all the end of the year events and both the work that's going to take place here over the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we can go into our consent agenda minutes. But actually, before I do, I'll just say, since I have all of these, we have all of these incredible leaders right here in front of us, on behalf of the board, we'd like to thank you for all of your incredible work. You guys have always worked hard, and you always do tremendous things, but you've done even more so this year, and we're all aware of how hard you've worked and are very appreciative of it as board members, as parents, as community members. It's been incredible to have such partners in the work that we do. So thank you. Consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
These are the minutes from our June 1st meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Our committee minutes are here for review: the policy committee, the technology committee, and the district-wide safety team. Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? The textbook adoption that we heard about earlier is here. And Dr. Benante, do you have anything you want to point out? Are we good?
Nothing further.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? The tenure recommendations that we heard earlier are here for our approval, and the abolition, such a strong word, the abolition of the interventionist positions, right? And that's what the pedagogical employee piece is.
That's correct, and then also an accompanying set of non-pedagogical employees. And I just wanted to mention the board in discussing this with Jen. I realized that these resolutions may not have appeared in the past. Just in speaking with our attorney, he recommended that this become part of the regular process, that if the board's obviously creating a position, we would move to have you create the position, and also if we're through the budget process abolishing positions, that the board would then formally act on the abolishment of those positions as we go along. So each year I would anticipate that we would have a level of positions potentially being created, and then also positions that are being abolished. So maybe the first time you're seeing it that way, but definitely part of our I would say housekeeping to some degree, and that's not, I do want to say this is, I know the board and the administration took this seriously in deliberating on the budget whenever, because we realize that there's people who are behind these positions more often than not.
Okay. There's a lot of items here. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Unfinished business.
Just congratulations to our
now
officially tenured employees, including
Thank
Dr.
you.
Silke.
Yay. Board of Education retreat date. So this is like sad trombone, guys. Megan worked on this calendar, and I don't know if you can see from afar. Margaret, you don't care. I'll put it over here. There is not one day that all 5 of us are available. Not one. Between on July and August. Not one.
Is enjoying a much-needed vacation.
We're all just like, I'm out. So I'm not really sure what to do about that, unless there's anybody, I guess my,
What are some days when everybody but one person's available?
there's a lot of those. I
Well,
mean,
that's where we should start, because maybe,
somebody has flexibility.
yeah, although I will say the only dates I listed are dates that I'm going to be out of town.
Same.
So, for,
And I
but
think
like
the
for
same for
work,
John.
like, it's not, you know.
So the only date that I can see as possible isn't until August. And those are days that Sean is busy in the evening. But there is one weekend where Sean is available in the morning and we're all available in the morning, which is August 21st and August 22nd.
I think that's,
And that is not ideal for anybody because it's late and Phil would like it earlier. So,
It's,
I mean, it's
can be
okay, but I'm just
flexible.
saying.
We can
I
be
know.
flexible.
I know, I'm just saying, it's not ideal, but that is the only thing that I currently see.
well, are there any days where almost all of us are available in the, in July? No.
No. No, there isn't. I mean, we're all here for, on July 6th, our reorg date. So that's my other idea, that maybe we could somehow
why don't we do
finagle
that?
something happening.
Does-
Just a really long, I mean, the reorg meeting is usually quick.
Yeah.
It's kind of perfunctory.
Well, we've also done something in August where we'll do the meeting a little early.
Business
Correct.
meeting.
Like, people agree to take some time off from work.
Right.
It's July 5th, that doesn't seem unreasonable for people. But like, we could do, like, the reorg meeting, I don't know, like at 4 or 5, and then, but that assumes everybody can,
Like, do the reorg meeting starting at 5,
That
reorg
assumes
meeting
people
from like
can-
5 till 6, and then retreat 6 to 9?
I think. It means having the, yeah.
What do you guys think about that? 5 o'clock on July 6th?
6, right? 6.
July 6th.
5:05. I'll be coming down the hill.
Oh, that's right, you have a note that says not till 5. So 5:15.
That's perfect.
5:15 on Tuesday, July 6th. And then we'll just
Power through.
power through a quick meeting and then continue on and see how far we get with our retreat. What do you think about that?
It feels more like an advance than a retreat.
I actually have that, that's actually a work holiday for me. Wait, no, it's the 6th. It's the
6.
6.
6.
Sixth,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
not
did I
the
say that wrong?
fifth. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll pencil that in. If anyone gets home and realizes that's a problem, let us know.
And so we'd go till 9 or 9:30.
We'll say 9:30, and hopefully
Let's
we'll
say
get out a little
9:30.
early.
I think we should say 9:30.
We'll have some
Let's say
espresso.
9:30.
Yes, coffee
Are
to
you,
be
are we
provided.
pressuring you
Strong.
into an unfortunate first meeting?
Jump right in.
I
Maggie,
don't want
jump
to
right
be
in.
peer pressuring the new member into like
The
a
death-
4-hour meeting
The
on
death march
our
of first meeting. Welcome.
Okay, okay,
And Jen, I
good.
don't want to be, I guess, presumptuous in the agenda, but I think the goal on our end that we were looking for is that this meeting will occur shortly after our admin retreat. So we will begin to discuss some of the, I think, shared areas of focus that will be the basis for goal setting for the upcoming school year. So that could happen quite readily. My hope would be that it allows the administration the summer now to further engage in planning around those areas.
Yes,
I
that
mean,
makes
and
sense.
you really plan these more than anybody else, and that gives you enough time to.
I think we'll be fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we'll be okay.
I think that's the way to do it.
Okay. All right, great. Board self-evaluation. So it was important to get this wrapped up so Margaret could be a part of the process.
Yes.
So I will turn this over to John to lead us through this conversation.
Fantastic, thank you. And Margaret was part of the process. She chimed in, which we certainly appreciate. So everybody should have the copy of the board feedback, both the comments and the qualitative and the quantitative. So rather than go through everything, what I thought I would do was highlight on the quantitative, or where people scored things, I think 2 areas of interest. One is where we had sort of a diversity of opinion, where we are, in general, we are all fairly clustered in how we score ourselves. So what I think is interesting is where we're not clustered. And I think that will lead to some interesting conversations, especially at our retreat. It's like, why are we have a diversity of opinion on these particular things? So that's one area, and I'll highlight which ones of those there were. The second one, I think, is areas where somebody on the board scored or rated our performance in a particular category as developing. If you remember, there are 4 categories of rating: consistently exceeds, meets, developing, and ineffective. So if you're smart, if you're following along at home, where we have diversity of opinion, 3 different ratings, is also going to be the place where we have a developing rating, right? Because you can't get through that. So I think those are the 2 interesting categories. I will highlight them for you now, and I'll give a little bit of commentary only because I think a number of the places where we have developing, there are things that we are working on that will help us get there. But I don't want to speak for the board. I just want to provide a little, I'm saying this is my personal perspective, all right? So in places where we had a diversity of opinion, e.g. where we had 3 different ratings, somebody was developing, somebody was consistent, somebody was exceeds, there were 2. One was 3D, which states the board actively generates support for the district through its vision and promoting educational opportunities for all students. I'm not going to interpret why, but I'm just going to put that out there. I think there are reasons why that could potentially be a diversity of opinion, but I think that there's some conversation that needs to be had. Sure. The board actively generates support for the district through its vision and promoting educational opportunities for all students. It's not written very well, A, but B, I think there's a couple different things in there different people could have focused on. So that's one. The second place where we had a diversity of opinion was 4E, which is the board supports the recruitment of highly effective teachers, administrators, and staff, and provides professional development support to meet APPR requirements. Again, I think there are places in there where there are probably differences of opinion or people focused on different aspects of that statement. Okay. So those are the only 2 places where there was a sort of a broad diversity of opinion. Now I'll talk you through the 4 where we had developing ratings. So you'll see those 2 pop up again. First was 1, and I'll add a little color commentary. First was 1C. The board regularly monitors progress on district goals, effective instruction, and student achievement with data-based information. This has been a focus for us, certainly a couple of times, and this year, and I certainly know that we have started to hear from the administration more this year than we have in the past, and some of the comments were that we feel like we've started on a path, but there's more to be done. That's just sort of the commentary that I would highlight. Second one is 3E. The board is an advocate for the district's interests with legislators and other elected public officials. I think people recognize that that happens sporadically by individuals on the board, but perhaps not as a collective board entirely. And the other 2 were the 2 that I just mentioned. Board supports the recruitment of highly effective teachers. I think the director of curriculum and the work that we're doing in there is the step towards making improvement there. And finally is the board actively generates support for the district through its vision and promoting educational opportunities for all students. And that one I don't know how to unpack. I think that one we need to have a little bit of a conversation of what does that mean for us? How do we want to improve on that? What does it mean to be exceeding on that dimension? So there you have it.
Thank you. I think that I think the summary is really helpful, John, and I also think that you're right. It can really help us craft our goals for next year. And I think that the retreat is the right place to dive deeply into them. I think I'd like to give Margaret an opportunity just to share specifically, Margaret, if you have any thoughts, because we're going to have a chance to dive deeply into this at our retreat. But if you had anything you wanted to highlight.
Well, it's funny because John had asked that too, and I said I definitely stepped back from this intentionally, being that I was a lame duck person. So I very much stepped back. You know, my big concern always has been, I feel like the communication amongst the board members, we've never developed a really solid system to share what questions people asked and how I would know what John asked, or I would know what Sean asked, and Sean, when, you know, we set it up at a point where we would copy everyone and then the responses would go back, but it's tricky with the open meeting laws. But I always felt like there were a lot of times that I was in the dark of, oh, well, that question's already been answered. I'm thinking, I never heard that question. And I think that comes from the board president, but we've never set it up. We've never really set that system. And I think that's a big gap.
Okay. Okay.
There was a point where if somebody asked a question, right, because we can't, to respect the open meeting laws, we can't have these email exchanges, right? Like, you know, we can't all be on emails with where there's a chance that there's some sort of conversation. But there was a point where if somebody asked a question, everybody would be CC'd on the reply. And that way you would see the question and see the reply, the idea just being that it was informational, it wasn't, and I don't know, I guess I don't know when that stopped. And maybe we'd need to sort of confirm with Mike or an open meetings law person if that's appropriate, because it sounds like that's really primarily your concern.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is certainly something for us to
Yeah, I think it gets tricky when, you know, if it's a quick question and answer, that's one thing. If there's back and forth.
Right, that's the issue.
If there's, oh, let me just pick up the phone and call.
Right.
Then it starts to get tricky about how to share that information.
But everyone should have that information.
Absolutely, everybody has the right to that information. Absolutely.
It's how to operationalize it without it getting messier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the one other thing I just want to add about this is, so this is new, right? This board self-evaluation process is in its second or third year?
Second
year.
round, yep.
So one of the things I was thinking as I was filling it out this year is it's you know, NYSBA has done a really nice job in sort of setting up an evaluation process for, you know, for the superintendent and for and for the board, but I actually kind of would like us to look at all of those standards and practices and really see if we really do, if those are ours, and if we think they're the right ones, because I look at those. So for example, take the legislative one. Have we as a board made a commitment that that's something that we want to systematize? I'm not sure about that, frankly. You know, like, because I think if that were the case, then there would be some real things that we would set up as general practices, right? We'd have somebody who always goes to the resolutions meeting at the conference. You know, we'd review those together. Like, I think that might be the next step for us as a board in terms of doing this process, is to really look at those standards and the practices under each standard, and really decide, are these things that we want to be highly effective at doing? And
That's an excellent point, Peggy, because like, for example, there's no communication amongst the board as something to evaluate.
Right. I captured your comment, but I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to
Where
put
does
it.
this go?
Right.
And like, how do we operate as a board team? There's stuff about how do we operate with the superintendent, but not necessarily how much about we operate with each other. So I think that's a great point. And I think we also have to remember, I mean, NYSBA is an advocacy lobbying group. I mean, not that this is propaganda, but I mean, they have an agenda too, right? They want boards to be advocating at the state and federal level. So
One of the things we could do for next year is take this as a structure and adjust as we see fit, and either
that's a
add
great
or
idea.
delete
But that-
practices.
But that, maybe that's something for us to do as like, I mean, as like even a mid-year board retreat would be to you know,
Yeah.
to look at that.
Customize.
And think about that, because there were other things when I was reading it, when I was doing it this year, it's like, like, some of the things I didn't even necessarily think were the board's role.
You had that comment a couple times. You're
Like,
I'm not
we're not supposed to be we're not the ones supposed to be doing these, I mean, I don't know. So,
Or finding ways we might want to reword some of the question,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
statements.
I think we got to this place from a really good intention that we wanted to begin doing this self-evaluation. It wasn't something we had done. We did the training, we've got this tool, but I think after these 2 rounds of it, we need to think about, so as a board, like, what does that mean? And when there is an item on the board has effective methods of communicating with each other, like, what does that mean for us? I think it'll be hard for us to I'm not sure how productive it will be for us to keep using this exact evaluation tool without stopping and taking a pause and saying, okay, what are our goals for ours? Like, is this really matching what we, and with the superintendent, think is what we're supposed to do? So anyway.
Yeah, that's
That's a
excellent. Thank you.
Great point. It's a great point.
Does anybody have any opposition to forwarding this document to Dr. Benante? I'm sure he'd
No?
be curious to know
No.
what we're talking about. Is that okay? Does anybody have any?
And Maggie, I'll send it to you.
In case
as
you
well.
want something else to read? And to Miss Maggie over there?
Another thing to learn about.
In case you have something else, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, John, for leading us through that. And it sounds like we all have more work to do, but,
Always something to do.
okay, thank you, thank you. I feel like that's good enough for now. Are you guys feeling comfortable? Okay. Okay, CSE, CPSE recommendations. Ms. Platt.
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Bond resolution, Ms. Platt.
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the attached resolution authorizing the purchase of student transportation vehicles for the Haldane Central School District at Phillipstown, Dutchess, and Putnam Counties, New York, at an aggregate maximum estimated cost of $175,000, and authorizing the issuance of $175,000 serial bonds of said school district to pay the costs thereof.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
We actually do need a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. President Daly?
Yes.
Vice President Headland?
Yes.
Trustee Clements?
Yes.
Trustee McNall?
Yes.
Trustee Parr? Yes. Thank you.
The rejection of bids for the capital referendum. Ms. Platt.
Whereas the Board of Education, in accordance with Article 5A of the General Municipal Law, invited bids for capital work, electrical, mechanical upgrades, and whereas all bids significantly exceeded the estimate cost of work, therefore be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby rejects the bids and directs the architect and Director of Facilities to rebid the electrical and mechanical upgrades contract.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Benante, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Just to note that this is attached to the 2019 referendum and the next phase of the project that was scheduled, or that is scheduled to be done. And we've rejected bids before, and that's part of the process at times. So we'd like to rebid this. After consulting with Tim and reviewing the bids that had come in, we feel it's in the district's best interest to reject this bid and put it back out to bid.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Policy review, first reading. Do we need to vote on this? No, it's just here. Okay. So we are very happy to announce that the policy manual is here for our review.
I'm only on page 800. So you got to give me.
The second reading and hopeful adoption will be at our reorganization meeting. So nobody expects you to read the entire manual between tonight and our next meeting. Go ahead.
I just
Dr.
wanted to
Benante.
make note for Ms. Valentine that if it has not yet been shared with you, you can look forward to it being shared in the coming days, because Megan was arranging for you to have the opportunity to review this in light of the fact that you will be voting on it come July.
And I'm going to just meet with her to
Oh,
give her
fantastic.
some
Great. Thank you,
background
Peggy.
on
Yep.
what we've done and what we're voting on and what she really,
Good.
sort of, so.
So this is very
It's a
exciting.
big deal.
It's 1,126 pages, just so we'll give you a few extra days.
And the document is real, good, great. Maggie sent it as a PDF, which is great, because the
Maggie,
Word
yes.
version of the manual is impossible. It's so big, it's horrible. But the PDF,
And here you'll see that's also attached are the other relevant documents that we thought were relevant, at least, right? So the ones that are required by law, the chart of the changes that we made, in case you want to review those. Cross-reference.
just as a reminder, we didn't give all 3 customization and commentary charts, but if you start with the 2 ago, the December 2020 and the June 2021, you'll get a sense of every policy that's been changed and sort of, and why. And then I do think this list of required laws, or list of policies required by law or regulation is really very valuable, because you'll see it's many fewer policies than are actually in our policy manual. And it sort of helps you know, like, which ones we've elected to implement and which ones we have to have implemented, so.
Any questions about the very exciting policy manual first reading? We're good? Okay. Any communication from the public? Board committee reports, I feel like this is the policy committee update, is that you've gotten your manual, unless anybody has anything further to say. Dr. Benante or Peggy? Okay. I don't have a Westchester Putt update. We're setting up our summer retreat date, which is just as complicated. That's all I have to say about that. Board reflections, I just want to make mention that I think we are still in process with scheduling our interviews for, right?
Yes,
Our upcoming interviews, so that may be Tuesday.
Correct. Thank you, Jen. We are interviewing finalists for the Director of Curriculum and Human Resources position tomorrow through Friday. And assuming that we have a candidate or candidates who we feel comfortable at that point meeting with the board, we would like the board to be prepared to meet with a finalist or finalists in the coming week or weeks.
Okay, so we're not sure. It might be next week, it might be the following,
Correct.
okay, so that's still to be determined. And
Which
if
means,
it's
Margaret, we
before-
may have you for another Tuesday.
If it's before July 1st, that would be
Okay,
you.
all right, so
Thank you.
So don't schedule plans for
Don't
next
schedule
Tuesday or
anything.
Tuesday
Don't get too
after that.
excited.
So it's not, so if we do that, it's not necessarily next Tuesday.
Not necessarily. I
Okay.
mean, I would seek to find a date that worked for the board. I know Tuesdays generally are good, but it also is late June. This is one final piece of business that we're hoping to wrap up before
Okay,
the
Great,
end of the school
so
year.
we'll
Good,
stay
good.
tuned on that.
okay.
Any board reflections to share?
can I ask one question about graduation? So I know we have our stoles from last year. Do we have our gowns too?
Yeah.
Julia, I
Do we
know you
have
were-
gowns?
Yep.
We should. You should have them. All right, so I just have to check.
Right.
Okay, I just know I packed it when I moved, and I wanted to know if I was looking for it or not looking for it. I know where the stole is.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Dr. Benante?
Just on that note, we're looking forward to commencement exercises on Saturday. A lot has gone into planning the ceremony in light of ever-evolving health and safety regulations. And Julia and her team have put a lot of effort into that. Thank you in advance for it, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Okay, well,
Thank you for everything. It's been a fun 6 years.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you, Margaret. Okay, well, with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.